Hi there, welcome back. This is lesson 5.5. It's chapter 5, lesson 5. We're still constructing the scene for our show, and now we're adding in audio. Now, there's a couple of things to show you about audio when we're looking in Unity. First of all, it's quite easy just to be able to put audio in your scene just to let it play. That's the whole, that's very easy to cover. What we're also going to look at in this lesson is spatial sound. So that's how we can make the sound source track around the camera to give you the sense it's coming from certain directions. Now in this room I have a quadraphonic sound system, so it's 4 speakers that are set up to a sound card which can do 7.1 surround sound. If you've got a surround sound system connected up to your computer in any way, whether it's through an amplifier or it's actually like a desktop 7.1 system or 5.1, you'll be able to do this yourselves. But obviously you can't easily hear what is happening in my room because you don't have my ears, so it's very difficult to show you, but I'll explain how it works. Now what I've done is I've downloaded a pack of sound effects from the asset store. Now, you've probably just got one that you want to use, that's fine, but I've just brought in a whole pack because it's quite handy to have a range of things to look at. And the trick here is to you download game sound effects. They're all very gamey. You've got lots of gunshots and splatters and people dying. So try to find something that works. So I'm just going to go for voices here because it's most likely going to have something that lasts a long time. So let's just try and find kids. I've got children, so I'm used to this sound. 6-year-old. How long's that?
Excellent!
Right.
Excellent!
That's quite fun. Well, okay, what we want is probably something a little bit longer than that. Let's have a look what else we've got. These are all individual words. Let's try and find something a little bit longer. What about words, phrases? Let's just try female, mono. That looks a bit longer. That looks even longer. Let's try this.
Awaiting instructions.
That'll do. That's long enough. Okay, so I've got voice, female, awaiting instructions. That'd be a lot of fun if you're building an app, wouldn't it? So if you want to put this in your scene, first of all, just click and drag it and drop it in your scene. There you go. It's actually going to do something else. What it should do is create a audio source. Now, it might have applied that to my floor, actually, which isn't what I wanted to happen at all. There it is, audio source. It's applied it to the thing I attached it to, which isn't ideal. So that audio track is now connected to my game floor, which is actually my show floor. I mislabeled. So I'm going to remove that component and I'm going to show you how you should really do it properly. First thing is we want an empty which just has all of our audio tracks in it, so it's nice and easy to find, and we can turn them all off if we want to get rid of them. And actually I should have done one for my lights. In fact, I've got one for my lights. I should move all my lights that we made in the last lesson into that folder that I created lights. There you go. Just keep it all nice and neat so everything's easy to find. And in audio, I'm going to create another empty. So I'm going to right click on it so I can build it automatically as a child of the parent. And I'm going to call this, what was it called? Woman instructions underscore audio, just so it's clear what it is. Now I can just click and drag it in to that. So let's just do it the easy way. I'm just going to click and drag it onto the empty in the hierarchy, and now that's converted that into an audio source. Now we could have done it another way. We could have actually gone into the plus sign here, or right clicked and gone audio, create an audio source, and it adds it there. You'll see the audio source is exactly the same. Doesn't make a difference at all. So I've got my audio source, here it is, and that's just going to play. You don't need to do anything else to it. I could loop it, so it just keeps playing continuously, which is kind of handy. And I'm going to come to these other settings in a second when we get involved in 3D sound. But whilst we're not, if this is spatial blend here, it's set to 2D, it's just going to be heard equally everywhere, no matter where you are. So if I hit play now, hopefully this will work.
Awaiting instructions.
There we go.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
So on a loop. So that's not going to be annoying at all, is it? So now let's just try doing some spatial sound. But if I convert this to spatial sound, we won't hear anything straight away because we haven't set this up for quadraphonic. It's only set for stereo. So in fact, what I get is a sound traveling between my 2 front speakers, not my back 2 as well. So let's just hit play.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
Closer to the
Awaiting
camera.
instructions. Awaiting
Away from the
instructions.
camera.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
You might be able to hear this
Awaiting
because
instructions. Awaiting.
because it might be recording in stereo, but it won't record it in four channel mode. Now, this actually is a really, really large sphere. You see how big this sound capture area is, way bigger than our scene. So let's make it a bit smaller, minimum distance and maximum distance. We did cover this in the sound part of the lesson earlier. I'm gonna make that 5, and that's probably still big. I'm gonna make it 3. So it's really small. Okay, now if I hit play, I'm going to...
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
Away from the camera.
Awaiting instructions.
Yeah, that's gone
Awaiting
quieter.
instructions. Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
I'll move it over this
Awaiting
side.
instructions.
Now I can hear it coming
Awaiting
through
instructions. Awaiting instructions.
through the different speakers. Now what's actually listening to it is the camera. There's an audio listener. There can be one audio listener in the scene. It's usually attached to a camera because that would normally be the player. So you need to have that where you want things to be heard from. So if you wanted to specify exactly where that was, irrespective of the camera, you could like just create an empty, put it in the auditorium, and then all of the sounds will be heard relative to that point of view. So it's almost like your eyes are left on stage and your ears have been left in the auditorium. So it is sensible to keep it with the camera. And that means if you're moving things around, you can look to the right and you'll hear the sound to your right, you hit to the left, you hit on the left. Now, in order to make it quadraphonic and more spatial, we need to go into our project settings. So go to project settings. You spend a lot of time in here when you get involved in publishing. There's lots of interesting settings. We were in Player earlier on looking at splash screens, but we're going to look at audio here. And in here, we can just set the speaker mode. So it's set to quad at the moment. That is actually what we want. You've got mono, you've just got one speaker. Stereo, for most things, even phones have stereo outputs. They actually do have 2 speakers in most modern phones. You've obviously got surround 5.1, 7.1. So in my office, I've got quadraphonic speakers because that's actually the setup I have in the motion capture studio where we also work. So I can do testing in both situations using the same project files. But at home, I've got 7.1 surround, and that's just awesome because you can literally drag an object around the room and hear it coming out of all the speakers, and the subwoofer just picks it up wherever it is because it just takes the bass from an average from all the other sources. So make sure that's on quad if you're doing quad, or 5.1 if you've got a 5.1 system. And then I should, in theory, here, if I just go overhead so I can see my camera. So the camera is facing a slightly odd place. Let's bring it back and put it somewhere a bit more sensible. So we can see our whole scene. That'd be quite helpful anyway, wouldn't it? We should have done that earlier. Lift it up a bit so we can go underneath it. Obviously, if you go underneath it, it's not going to track the sound spatially unless you I don't actually know how to do that, but I suppose if you spin the camera on its side, you could then have the sound travel sort of laterally, so you could then put your speakers around you this way rather than on the horizontal plane. But in the setup I've got here, with that camera fairly straight, the idea is that if I'm on the left-hand side of it, the sound will come out of my left set of speakers. It doesn't matter what height it's at. So let's try that out. So I'm going to hit play.
Awaiting instructions.
I'm going to grab my audio
Awaiting
source.
instructions. Awaiting instructions.
Now I'm gonna move
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
And you can see here how
Awaiting
it's
instructions.
distributing
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
Now I'm hearing it come out of my
Awaiting
speakers at the back.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions.
It's louder.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting
go.
instructions. Awaiting
Now we can change this by
Awaiting
changing the
instructions.
roll off to linear. So it's a bit more aggressive then about
Instructions.
spatial.
Awaiting instructions. Awaiting instructions. Awaiting
Different
instructions.
speakers.
Instructions. Awaiting instructions.
So there you go. So that's spatial sound. Now there's some other things you could do. You can apply an audio mixer, which is a separate controller, which you could put into your scene. So let's have a look here. Create. Oh, what did I just click? I did something I didn't mean to do. Clicked on the wrong button. Let's go back. Create. I clicked on Show and Explore. We want to create. Where is it? An audio mixer. Now the audio mixer can take the controls of the objects even further. So you've got masters and snapshots, and basically in here you can start to set individual settings which that audio source could drive into. So if you wanted to set like a global volume, that can be driven for all devices. You could put it for your audio mixer. We're not going to go into that now. It's a bit too advanced for this course. We'll do that another one. The important thing is you know how to bring in an audio source and make it play. Now you can do some clever things to turn it up. If it ticks off, it doesn't make any sound, so you can turn it on and off when you need it. But when we get to chapter 6 and we look at Playmaker, we can start creating some controls to manipulate these things. So we can create a slider maybe in the UI, in the game view, that changes the volume overall, just effectively just grabs this and moves it around. But as part of the game, we could have a button that turns it on and off. So when it gets turned on, it plays the sound and it automatically turns off after 1 second, 1.5 seconds, however long that clip is. So we'll get to that later on when we start doing Playmaker. Otherwise, that is audio. That is all we're going to do with it right now. And you can have loads of fun creating your own audio source. You can have as many audio sources as you want. Actually, the more the better you have. If you're doing something like a robot or something that's got lots of mechanical parts to it, and you've got lots of individual sounds, you really go to town on that spatial sound, like placing them in every individual cog. The more detail there is, the more believable it is for a user. Obviously, it does use more processing, but that's really the sort of quality that you'd want to build into a quality experience. So in the next lesson, we're going to move on to adding video textures, and this is something we tried to do earlier in the project, and it didn't work in a quick fix. So we're going to go through it in a bit of detail and show you how to add videos into your scene, and then we're going to finish off with adding characters in as a reference, just some mannequins and things, so that you can get a sense of scale of people. And then that's the end of this chapter of constructing the scene, and we're going to move on to Playmaker. So I'll see you in the next lesson on video textures. Thank you.